So hey everybody, it's TR back with another RV how-to video. If your service advisor sucks, so does your service. Yeah, this is an epilogue to my When Is It Time to Get Professional Service video. I had alluded in episode 6 of On the Road to some issues I had with getting service done by Warner Truck Centers in Twin Falls, in that they let me down and they didn't get the one main thing I wanted to get fixed done. They didn't even start on it. And so I had to go back and, well, here's the story. So we get to the end of the project, right? And so what I had done was I had service oil filters. I had new shock absorbers put on, which, by the way, I think have made a huge difference. But I also had a hydraulic hose that needed to get repaired. It was in really tough shape. And to rub a little salt in the wound, I had been working with this service advisor for a week and a half because I wanted to give him the opportunity to get the shocks ordered in so I didn't have to pay freight. They could just come in on their normal trucks that come from the parts stores. As I mentioned, I was working with the service advisor to get those parts available, and then I also mentioned to him that I wanted to get this hose. And they went and looked it up, and the price was something like $300. I don't remember exactly. And I figured, okay, you know, no big deal. They can probably get that one made because in farm country, you can generally find a shop that makes hydraulic hoses. I think you could probably just about find one anywhere. Now, whether they would have the fittings exactly for what your setup is, that could be the issue. But in this particular case, ultimately, they did have the fittings and were able to make the hose. But it took another trip back. So on the first trip, they let me know that my bill was done, and so I went and checked it out, and I was going like, where's the service, right? Where's the hydraulic hose? And the service advisor who I'd been working with, it was his day off. And so the young gal that was helping me, you know, they go scrambling around, and she comes back, and they're all pretty much clueless. And so I kind of said, I want to see the shop supervisor. And so about 10 minutes, you know, they run off, they're scurrying off, trying to figure out what the F happened, I'm sure. And finally the shop supervisor comes and grabs me. And we go to the site office. I'm like, WTF, dude? You know, I've been here for 2.5 days now. I've been working with the service advisor for a week and a half to get this service done. And now we get to the end of this and the hose isn't done. Well, of course, he's backpedaling like crazy. And actually, I guess the service advisor came in. I never talked to him. But I did talk to the shop foreman, and they came out, took a bunch of pictures and measurements and all this crap for this hose, and it was going to be an overnight. They were going to have it in the shop overnight if they started at that point, and I was ready to get out of town. I'd been there 2.5 days, and I was meeting some people at my next destination, so I wanted to get on the road. Anyway, so it worked out that I just decided I'd have to go back. It was probably a 150-mile round trip to get back to get the service done. And so I go back the second time. But as I'd mentioned, I discovered that they'd overcharged me for oil, and they had charged me for 30 quarts, and the RV only takes 19. And so of course that was an issue, and I just figured, okay, I'm going to sort that out when I get back there. Also, I had inquired as to whether or not I could turn the horsepower on the engine up. I've read online that these Cat 3126s that I have can make 400 horsepower. You just have to change the computer programming. They don't like to do that because then it doesn't meet the emission standards. And so of course, you know, there's that trade-off. But I just was curious, you know, can it be done? And so they hooked the computer to the, you know, engine control port, and I guess they figured out, okay, the settings are where they're supposed to be, but charged me $75 to do that. Oh, excuse me, $72. And then just didn't tell me anything about whether or not I could turn the horsepower up on the engine. They just said it was set to what it was. So I was kind of disappointed in all that aspects of the service. You know, they didn't get the hydraulic hose changed. They didn't really tell me what I wanted to know about the engine. And, oh, I forgot to mention, they got the wrong front shocks and had to overnight freight some shocks in. So I ended up having to pay freight on those shocks they had to bring in overnight, which kind of chaffed me a little bit. So I'm already laying for bear when I go back the next time. It's about 13 days I get back there. I think it was something like that. And on Sunday night I check in. He says, okay, we're good. We'll see you tomorrow morning. And he comes out in the morning, gets all my information. And he's bragging to me, hey, you know, my cat guy's even here today. I'm going to let you just talk to him. Well, that never happened. And in fact, what I'd done is I had gone to town to do laundry, and I figured, they're going to be 2 or 3 hours getting that taken care of. I'll just run into town, I'll get my laundry done, and that'll save me sitting in the driver's lounge. Well, I was back by noon, and I sat in the driver's lounge until about 1:30, and I'm like, okay, what's going on? I haven't heard anything. So I called down there and talked to the service advisor, and he's and humming and hawing around about it. He doesn't know a damn thing about the hose. I'm like, okay, here we go again. I got this same service advisor, and as the title of the video said, if your service advisor sucks, so does your service. And in my particular case, it wasn't very good twice with the same service advisor. Anyway, so I raised a little hell, let's get that damn hose. Do you need me to go to town and pick it up? I'm like, come on, I want to get on the road. I'm, tired of sitting here waiting for you guys to fix this damn thing. I see the RV show back up out front, and obviously it's all checked out and ready to go. And so I'm sitting in the driver's lounge. I just hung out for a few minutes because I know it takes them some time to get the paperwork together and do that. But I go down about probably 3:15, so it's been 45 minutes I've been waiting upstairs. I go down to the desk, and the service advisor that I'm working with is nowhere to be found, but I can hear him talking. And there's a young gal there at the desk, the one that had worked with me that, when I was there on the trip before. And she was like, okay, well, let me go see what I can find out. And so I'm standing there at the desk for about 25 minutes. I can hear my service advisor having a conversation about some blankety-blank chainsaw that he was borrowing or had borrowed or something. I didn't catch all the conversation, but I could hear enough to know they were talking about the oiler on the chainsaw and all this bullshit. And my temperature's rising because I want to get on the road. I've got a 3.5-hour drive ahead of me, and I want to get there before dark. I hate to arrive at my campsites after dark, especially when I'm dry camping. Eventually, I hear the young service advisor gal interrupt him, and he just basically told her, well, I don't want to talk to him. You go take care of him. So it's at least 45 minutes because it's 4 o'clock. I still don't have my keys. I still don't have my frickin' bill. And I'm out of patience. Written off the overcharge on the oil and had taken the $72 off to hook the computer to the engine to tell me what I already knew, that it was set right. I was done with these guys and just wanted to get the hell out of there. So overall, I want to emphasize, I still think it's probably the right idea to go to the major service shops. But the service advisor is everything. Here's a message to Warner/Pensky Truck Center and any other truck center out there, whether you're driving an RV or a big rig. The service advisor is everything, and if you got a bad service advisor, you're going to get bad service, period. Now let's jump forward 3 months. To my one annual breakdown, it seems like I always have to have one breakdown every year. I must have kicked up a rock, and I poked a hole in my radiator, and ended up having to sit at the Freightliner shop in Idaho Falls, another Pensky Truck Center, for 8 days. Now, 2 of those days were my own fault. I'm not going to say anything about that other than to say that don't buck the service system. I didn't go through the shop bay where they would have got in there and found out the fan blade was broken. I hadn't noticed it. I noticed the hole in the radiator and the coolant leaking out, but I hadn't noticed that the fan blade was broken. Okay, that's my own dumb. I didn't crawl under there and look close enough. And they got it in the shop. They had to go and get the fan blade, which took an extra 2 days over a weekend, so it was really 4 days. It's my own fault, I freely admit that. But they had parked it out on the RV line so I could plug in and still live in it with, waiting for the parts. And they had bungeed up the 2 coolers, one for the transmission and one for the engine oil. They finally called me and say, okay, we've got all the parts, we're going to get you in, we're ready to go. And the guy comes out, the mechanic comes out to get it. And I told him, I says, you probably ought to get these radiators hung up a little higher. And by God, he didn't do it. And one of the radiators got scuffed. Well, and then again, my service advisor was gone when I finally checked out at 6 o'clock on a Monday night. And, so I wasn't going anywhere. I went back out on the line. And I went Tuesday morning to try to talk to the service advisor and complain about him that they had damaged that damn cooler. And of course, he's not there. The other service advisor's too busy. He doesn't want to talk to me about it. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to get the F out of here before I really have a conniption fit, because this is the second time I've kind of been dissatisfied with the service I've got from my service advisors. Now, all in, the Idaho Falls experience was much better than the Twin Falls experience. I'm going to be straight up with you there. But I learned some valuable lessons, and I'm going to share them with you. Let the process take place. let them do what they need to do to figure out what needs to be fixed. I didn't do that on the second time, and that was my mistake. So I guess what it comes down to is, the service advisor is everything. And if you don't like the service advisor, if you don't feel like they're taking care of you, then request a new one. That's some sage advice from somebody who's now learned that lesson, and I'm going to apply that. So hopefully from my mistakes you're going to learn that you got to stay on top of it right from the beginning and make sure they understand what you need to have done to get down the road. So I hope you like what you saw. If you did, be sure and give me that thumbs up. Those are always helpful. Don't forget to subscribe, and be sure and ring that notification bell. Lots of great RV how-to videos already on my channel, as well as my other miscellaneous ramblings and blogs and vlogs and those sorts of things. So I invite you to check out the other content on my channel if you're so inclined. I invite you to check out my photography and other content over on my website at www.trbolin.com. But for now, it's definitely time to go. Thanks for watching. I do appreciate it. Till we get together for another RV how-to video. Peace.